Now this may come as a shock to you, but we here at TripleJump aren't above the occasional double entendre. And we're far from alone, if video game titles are anything to go by. You probably won't have to look too deep into your game collection to find one or two risque names. Insomniac Games and Ubisoft, for example, are fans of the occasional innuendo. However, today we want to look at some that weren't quite so intentional. Maybe it's an older game that comes across a bit rude by today's standards, maybe something was lost in translation, or maybe someone in the development team was feeling a little bit cheeky that day. Whatever the case, we've pulled out 10 games that, while having innocent content and likely innocent intentions, also have names that will either make you blush like a schoolgirl or giggle like one. Both, if you're me. Strictly speaking, this list isn't not safe for work, but it might get you some funny looks if you're watching it in public. And we're talking to you here too, YouTube. These are just names of innocent games. It's nothing to demonetize us over, right? Also, spare a thought for our poor writer, who now has a very colourful internet search history. Anyway, I'm the squeaky clean Ashton from TripleJump, and here are 10 perfectly innocent video games with rude names. Number 10, Dragon Wang. We're kicking things off with Dragon Wang, an action-adventure for Sega's first home console, the SG-1000. It was a predecessor for the Master System's Kung Fu Kid. But while that title sounds like a cool 80s action movie for young people, this one sounds like something you might find while exploring a mythical reptile's undercarriage. Dragon Wang appears to be the name of the main character though, and not a reference to what you think of when you hear the phrase Dragon Wang. Unfortunately, the developers couldn't fit his full name onto the screen, so it's presented as D. Wang during the game. As far as heroic monikers go, I'm not too surprised that this one didn't catch on. Controlling the titular Dragon Wang is fairly straightforward. Explore corridors, beat up bad guys, defeat the boss, get the girl. You never do get the girl though. Apparently there is no ending, the last round just repeats itself over and over again for maximum Dragon Wang disappointment. Number 9, Hard Blow. In 1997's Hard Blow, players choose from an array of exceptionally muscular men who then proceed to give each other hard blows. Many of these are incredibly fast and intense, some of them even forceful enough to cause nasty injuries. Hard Blow is, of course, a boxing game, and if you were picturing anything else, well, that one's on you. Hard Blow was developed by Electronic Arts Victor, which was a joint venture between EA, believe it or not, EA were good in those days, and a company called Victor Entertainment. They came together in harmony to make sports games in Japan between 1990 and 1998, sports games such as Hard Blow. While it's obviously fairly clunky in today's standards, Hard Blow looks like a bright and characterful boxing simulation for the time. Perhaps even a precursor to the much more famous and far less hilariously named Ready to Rumble Boxing, which hit worldwide shelves only 2 years later. Sadly, EA Victor's boxing effort was never localised, so 90s gamers in the West never got to experience the glory of Hard Blow. Number 8, Let's Smash. Picture the scene. You're at a local bar, you're single, you're looking nice and having a great time. An attractive stranger approaches and whispers in your ear, "Let's smash." You go back to their place to, of course, find that they were looking for someone to play the 1999 centre court tennis with, the Japanese version of which was of course titled Let's Smash. It's all pretty obvious, really. The smash in Let's Smash refers to the type of tennis shot. The game features a multiplayer mode so that you and 3 friends can all smash together, an exhibition mode so that you can make an exhibition out of you smashing, and 4 different minigames, for which I don't have a Smash joke for. It was developed by Bomberman developer Hudson Soft, who aren't making their last appearance on this list, the cheeky monkeys. Honestly, I can't even watch tennis anymore thanks to this game and its rude title. I'm just afraid my parents will walk in and have to explain to them while I'm nervous about it, and that will only make them more concerned about me. Number 7, Grind Session. Grind session is one of those phrases that changes drastically depending on the context. If you already know you're talking about a skateboarding video game, then it's fine. If you've spotted it on the spine of a DVD, then you'll keep walking because we're all good little boys and girls around here. Luckily for us, today we're talking about the former. Grind Session is a skateboarding game for the PlayStation released when such things were all the rage. It received decent review scores, although some critics did argue that it was too similar to genre giant Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. But that one didn't have a dodgy name though, did it? You lose this round, Tony. Still, if you're looking for a fun skateboarding game and you've had it up to here with Mr. Hawk, then you could do worse than heading down to your local retro gaming shop to look for a copy of Grind Session. Just ensure that you specify you're looking for the video game before some poor shop assistant thinks you're looking for something completely different. You wouldn't want to cause a scene. Number 6, Wild Woody. Sometimes, a Wild Woody can be the absolute worst, showing up at inappropriate times, distracting you from important tasks, and just being downright uncomfortable. In the case of the 1995 Mega CD title, however, Wild Woody refers to an anthropomorphic pencil. He's an angry-looking little fellow, raging even. Also, his little eraser looks really disturbing. Or is that just me? The game is a side-scrolling platformer that was, seemingly, Sega's last-ditch attempt at birthing an edgy new mascot for a failing system. Players are tasked with controlling Woody as he travels to different dimensions, attempting to save the world alongside the totem pole that brought him to life. Take care though, because he's a wild Woody and therefore difficult to control. Wild Woody didn't do too well with critics at the time. Some reviewers enjoyed the music and praised the mechanic in which Woody would rub things out with his little eraser. However, its derivative gameplay, bland visuals, and devastatingly ugly FMV sequences all mean that this Wild Woody is definitely one you wouldn't want to show up during a job interview. Number 5, Nuts and Milk. Here they are again, Hudson Soft. Do you think they do it on purpose? They were involved with games like Pooyan, Super Bonk and Willy Wombat, so it seems possible. Nuts and Milk, however, sounds like a very straightforward shopping list to an innocent mind, and just a little bit rude to the rest of us. The protagonist of the game is an amorphous blob of fluid named Milk. Milk must avoid another, slightly discoloured blob of fluid named Nuts. They vie to reach and win the affections of a pink female blob. Her name is Yogurt. It almost looks and sounds like a misguided biology lesson for kids. Imagine if your teacher had wheeled out Nuts and Milk and made you watch as he or she guided the little milky fellow to the pink blob. Now stop imagining it because you're being disgusting. Anyway, the gameplay sees players controlling Milk as he dodges enemies in pitfalls while collecting fruit. Once all of the fruit is collected, Yogurt becomes available, and Milk merely has to touch her to ascend to the next stage. While other enemies will come and go, Nuts is ever present, trying to drive a wedge between Milk and Yogurt. See, nothing I actually said there is questionable, it just really feels that way. Number 4, 6-inch My Darling. Believe it or not, the title of this 1998 romance visual novel for the Sega Saturn is, perhaps surprisingly for the genre, not a reference to measuring that. Instead, it refers to the size of the tiny characters who players will meet and interact with throughout the story. The plot of 6-inch My Darling concerns a young high school student who takes a walk through a forest one day and finds a mysterious box. He takes it home, puts it in his room, and goes to sleep. Waking up the next day, he discovers that the box has somehow dispensed tiny 6-inch girls all over his room. The rest of the game follows the young man as he gets to know his miniature roommates, and they learn to understand the human world. It all seems fairly innocent, so the likelihood of the title being an intended innuendo is, well, it's still fairly high, let's be honest. Especially considering the game was later released for PC with added adult content, best not to think too hard about what that might have entailed. Number 3, Black Hole Assault. Alright, someone had to know what they were doing with this one, surely. This 1992 fighting game for the Mega CD involves an antagonistic alien race with an attacking spaceship sent from Earth. The humans then launch a counterattack with mechs, and this plays out in Mortal Kombat-style one-on-one battles across space. Aliens have been attacking ships, and robots duke it out with other robots, but at no point does anyone assault a black hole. And if you ask me, good. The game is actually a sequel to Heavy Nova, a 1991 title for the Mega CD and Mega Drive with similar themes. Both of these games were poorly received by critics, with reviewers pointing out tedious, repetitive gameplay. It seems the sequel tried to spice things up with a racy name instead of actually improving on anything. Having said all of that, if you're interested in tracking down a copy of Black Hole Assault, you can find it on eBay for around £15 if you're lucky. Just double check the listing to make sure you're adding the right thing to your cart. Number 2, Alone in the Dark, One-Eyed Jack's Revenge. No matter how you look at the US title of the PlayStation and Saturn versions of the second installment in the famous horror franchise, the implications are right there, and I can't even talk about them. They're just there, taunting me, taunting us all. Originally simply named Alone in the Dark 2, the publishers saw fit to add a subtitle to this game for the console ports. Over here in Europe, we just got Alone in the Dark, Jack is Back. But the US choice of specifying the monocular nature of Jack is what really makes the whole thing sound questionable. In case you're wondering though, One-Eyed Jack is actually the undead pirate captain of the Flying Dutchman, and not the player character Edward Carnaby's, closest companion. Interestingly, the Alone in the Dark 2 developers released a small promotional game prior to this one. In this bonus title, players take on the role of a young girl who is locked in a toy shop overnight and has to face an evil Jack in the Box. The name of this promotional game? Well, Jack in the Dark. And I'll leave that right where it is. And number 1, Touch Dick. Do you remember when the Nintendo DS was a worldwide phenomenon and pretty much every genre you could think of was covered in its extensive library? Games that are basically maths homework, games that are basically a clock, games that even help you quit smoking. There really wasn't anything left, surely. Then a Korean developer named YBM Sissa came along with Touch Dick, and the circle was complete. It's a handheld dictionary, of course. The game enabled users to translate words and phrases between English, Japanese and Korean, a useful tool for linguists and world travellers. It was quickly renamed to Touch Dictionary, however. Apparently native English speakers found the original title to be a little off-putting. Can't imagine why though. Incidentally, there's actually a follow-up to the useful dictionary on Sony's PSP as well. Don't worry, the developers learned from their previous mistakes and went for a much better name. It's called, Hand Dick. Guys, I think you missed the point. It wasn't the touch part that we had a problem with.